Hello, everyone. We're just about to begin, so kindly allow about 1 minute to so that everyone can just join the. We shall kick off in about a minute. All right, I do see it's 3 minutes past the start time, so we shall begin. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to today's webinar on scalability. This is the third part of a three-part webinar. And before I get into that, just a few housekeeping rules. As you do join the webinar, your camera and mic are muted. But do keep us engaged through the chat box that you see at the bottom of your screen. And then in the event you do not see a split between the presenter and the presentation, if you look to the top right of the screen, you should see a view button, and that should enable you to navigate between the slides and the presenter. But we have tried to show a split screen. So if you do not see the split screen, then you know how to navigate that. And then finally, this session is being recorded, and we shall share the recording at the end of this webinar. My name is Sandeep Main, and I'm an Associate Director with KPMG East Africa, and I do head up the Private Enterprise and Family Office within the East African region. And I'd like to welcome you formally to this final session of Scalability. Before I begin, maybe I'd like to talk about personal stories. So my dad is a philanthropist, and he does do a lot of charitable acts. And when I was much younger than what I'm today, I used to join him on weekends to see what exactly is it that he does. And essentially, he used to go to people seeking donations to a particular initiative, a charitable initiative. And these people used to either give him checks, cash, or donations in kind. And this would be collected then channeled towards that particular organization or charitable initiative. What I learned then was that the people that were giving, the donation were giving with a smile, which told me then they were giving from the heart. And in today's time, we have to ask ourselves that question: does giving from the heart still remain relevant? And it would be good to hear your thoughts. It's not a simple question that can be answered, in today's webinar, but it's a question for you to think about, and let me know your thoughts. Do you think giving from the heart is still applicable in today's philanthropic initiatives? So what I did see was that these people were giving my dad the donations because he had built credibility with them. They trusted him. They knew that that money would reach the intended purpose of that philanthropic initiative. And then we talk about disruption. Why do we say disruptive philanthropic? Technology has disrupted a lot of what we do today. So may it be in business, and philanthropy has not been left behind. Today, if you look at it, if I sit here today in Kenya and I see a cause that's being run, say in Botswana, in Nigeria, or across the globe, I can actually just sit from my laptop, comfortably go through the website, and once I'm sure that that is a credible organization, I can donate online. I do not need to go see the people. I do not need to go see the impact the money or the donation I've given is having on the end user. Unlike what I told you happened with my dad, where he used to go physically to see people, explain the initiative that's being done, and then share or actually progress that donation further. So times have changed. Technology has disrupted a lot of what we do today. And that in itself is called disruptive philanthropy. Now, bringing it, KPMG organized a three-part webinar. We started off with strategy and structure, which was then moderated by my colleague, Craig, from KPMG South Africa. And during that, we heard how philanthropists were talking about the importance of having a proper strategy that is implemented the importance of having a proper governance structure so that internal controls, processes that can bring forward credibility and trust in an organization. Then most recently, we talked about a very important topic called the power of collaboration. This was then moderated by my colleague Nike from KPMG Nigeria. And she talked about the power of collaboration and what collaboration means in today. What I heard from that particular session, and I'm sure most of you that attended that session listened to those stories and insights of the different philanthropists who said that when they started off their organization, they were part maybe feeding 10 to 100 children. And that was many years ago. But today, through the power of collaboration, they actually partnered with other organizations, other like-minded people, institutions, the government, so that they could make a bigger impact into the initiative of their choice, initiative of the cause that they would actually like to support. So that brings into scalability. Scalability, ladies and gentlemen, is a combination of strategy, structure, trust, credibility, and the power of collaboration. Without those elements, you cannot scale up your philanthropic objectives. So that in itself is what we're going to be discussing today. And we would like to hear from you, is giving from the heart still relevant in today's time and age? Moving on, I would now like to begin with a question. So if you can see the poll question on your screen. So the question is essentially, what have you scaled up? So we are in the pandemic. We have seen how the pandemic affected us making donations, the economic crisis that came in most countries because of the lockdowns. But philanthropists still continued to donate, still continued to make a difference, make an impact in the initiative, the philanthropic initiative of their choice. So I'd like to hear from you, what have you scaled up, or what is your initiative that you have continued to do even during the pandemic? Okay, so you have a number of choices there. You have arts and culture, you have education, which is an important one. A lot of children below the poverty line do not get a good quality education. So is that what speaks to you, and is that what you scaled up and continued supporting? And this is a multiple choice question, so you can pick more than one. But if you have just the one that you're passionate about, then please share that. The environment is a big thing. We talked about the ESG agenda, which is the environmental, social, and governance agenda. A big thing, has been there in the past, but today, in the recent past, it's now given more and more attention. We need to ensure that we do sustain the environment for our own sustainability. What are we doing from a social perspective, which is what we're talking about today, and then from a proper governance perspective as well. You do have gender equality, civil rights, mental health has become a big issue, especially for us working from home. And just a bit about that, in the past when you used to have 50 to 100 people coming to the office, interacting, talking to each other, was different from when now most offices locked down and said work from home. So a person was left, if you're single, then you're left in a little silo. So mental health has become a major issue in the last 2 years, ever since the pandemic. We have medical research, and it's good to see how many of us are still on that. And then you have humanitarian causes, and finally the sports agenda. So I'm going to give a few more seconds to those who are still voting. Please bring in your votes. And if you want to chat us, please do so on the chat box below your screens. Okay, can we see the results? And it seems education is a top contender, closely followed by the environment. Really good to see. And then we have mental health, humanitarian causes, and then closely followed by mental health. So those are the top 4. I see no one has actually picked civil rights, all right, or medical research, and that's something interesting to note. Now, this is what the participants on this particular call have voted for. Let's see how that looks from a global context. So KPMG had done a global survey on the same to see what people have scaled up, organizations have scaled up. And the first one there you see is education, and then closely followed by youth. The youth agenda has become a major issue. And we do know our youth, those who have been educated and those who have not been educated, finding jobs, getting a decent salary, or sustaining themselves has become a major challenge in most countries. So philanthropists have focused on children, especially the orphan children, the children who cannot get quality education, and then moved on to community development, which is really tapping into the local community to see how they can improve the standard of life of the local communities. And medical research and environment are actually tied head to head. I was a bit surprised to see that the environment did not take a top three slot in terms of initiatives that need to be scaled up. We all know the issue around the forest cover, the issue around what we need to do to preserve the environment. So I'm hoping that in the future, environment becomes a key agenda to scale up for most philanthropists. And then we have hospitals, which is really healthcare amongst now the humanitarian causes. And these are essentially what we talk about when people need to come together to support a country that's going through a crisis, say disaster, floods, and whatnot. And then the final three there, as you can see on the screen, are really between gender equality, racial equality, and sports. And in the recent past, I know even gender equality has become a major pain point, and it is something that has a focus of a lot of charitable organizations, and they would like to see this progress further. So what can be done around that? There was someone telling me about a thought process on how they believe gender equality can be achieved, and they were saying that perhaps from a tax perspective, women in business should be given a lower rate of tax to be paid than their male counterparts. A debatable topic, but possibly something to bring that initiative through to ensure gender equality is top of mind. So with that, I would now like to introduce our panel of philanthropists. And these are people who have done a lot of philanthropic activities, and I'd like to ask them to do a self-introduction. And I'm going to start with Asanteva. Asanteva, kindly switch on your video. Tell us a bit about yourself and the philanthropic initiatives you've undertaken recently and in the past. Asant, yes. You're on mute, sorry, yeah.
My name is Asantwa. I'm the second half of Black Park. I'm second generation. Black Park is a furniture and fittings company. In the past, some of the activities that we've been involved in terms of philanthropic activities have been in the education sector, they've been in the health sector, and then in our general society, helping to improve the areas that we find ourselves in.
Thank you so much, Asanteva, for that. So it's really good to hear that you have a focus on education, which we saw is in line with the global scalability initiatives and the global causes that have received attention so far. And it's good to see that you're doing something about the healthcare, and it would be good to hear a bit more about that later in today's webinar. Titsi, over to you. Maybe you could switch on your camera and do a self-introduction and tell us a bit more about your philanthropic initiatives and what drives you.
Absolutely. So my name is Titsi Mtendi, and I am a third generation family business owner. I have been involved in philanthropy for the longest time through the family businesses that my grandparents set up, through my parents themselves, and also now through my own family businesses and the family that I'm married to. So the areas that have been of focus throughout, I think, is the common thread, which is education, healthcare, especially with my parents, because they're both in the medical industry, and also looking at community development, especially in disaster relief situations. My in-laws have had extensive work, especially in the education sector, disaster relief, and also looking at conservation.
Thank you so much for that, TC, much appreciated. And it's good to see that there's already some synergy between what you do and what Black Park is doing with Asanteva. And yeah, so Patience, over to you. Please do a self-introduction and let us know about the additional initiatives that Asanteva spoke about. What is it that drives you to do what you do?
Hi, thank you. So my name is Patience Atapepe, the CEO of Black. Over the years, our major concern has been education, and that's where we focus on. But we have added, again, health and security. But we continue to do more on education, and we have scaled up in terms of joining other groups so that the impact becomes bigger. So basically, the focus has been on education, and we have reason for focusing more on education, because for us coming from emerging economies or third world, we find that education is key, because we see our governments time over and again trying to build infrastructure because there's infrastructure deficit. But for Black Park, we see as what is infrastructure if the human capital that's going to use the infrastructure don't even know how to use it. So continuously, our governments will be borrowing or using internally generated funds to build this infrastructure. And so our preference is to educate more people, let them get into the classrooms, let them have wider knowledge, and then they know probably how to use this infrastructure so that when, let's say, a street is built and there's a pavement, people get to know that you walk on a pavement and not walk on the street. People get to know that the pavement is for walking and not to, showcase their wares to sell on pavements. We've also done hospitals. Some of them are turnkey projects that we have taken. Let's say finishing the women and children washrooms in a big hospital. It's just a turnkey that we start from beginning to the end. So basically, this is what we've been doing. We've been doing girl-child education funding, just to get more girls into school, because they are the ones who take care of children. So once they are enlightened, they get to enlighten the children as well. It has a ripple effect on society.
Thank you so much for that, Patience. And I think that was a really good background to what you're doing and how you're making an impact. But moving to Titsi, so we heard Patience talk about education, and that also cuts across what you are also doing. She talked about why education, and maybe you could tell us what was the driving force for you choosing, say, education as a philanthropic initiative. What prompted that?
I think because looking at Africa as a continent, similar to what Patience said, Africa is going to have, it currently does have the youngest population on earth, and it continues to grow and continues to amass more and more younger people. Yet our ability to educate these younger people through the traditional method has not always been catered to or focused on. And because of this, we have a lot more younger people who are uneducated. the pandemic itself caused a secondary pandemic, which is the lack of education for the younger children in Africa, especially those in the rural areas and those that had no connection to the internet and so forth. So during this time, we set about doing programs that focused on being able to get education to these children, be able to facilitate so that they can learn, and also after schools open, being able to continue giving them that extra, because previously it was mostly funding of scholarships and getting the children in schools. Now, even with the funding of scholarships, if they haven't gotten the basic education, they've lost almost 2 years of learning. It became essential for us as a family to help in terms of to boost the access to education during the pandemic, as well as now to do some more research in understanding how we can help all the children that were disadvantaged, or as many as possible, and also to collaborate with other philanthropists, other families, individuals who are interested in education to be helping to uptool these children that were disadvantaged.
Thank you so much for that, Titsi. So it's very clear to me that your strategy from the very beginning in terms of the impact that you want to make in education has really, you have made strides towards that. And one thing that you mentioned was really around the challenges of funding and looking for these scholarships. So I'd like to move to Asanteva. Asanteva, would you like to tell us about some of the challenges that you too have faced from your philanthropic initiatives? What are the key challenges that you faced?
Sometimes, in terms of challenges, I'll concentrate on the education aspect, and that runs through everything. So if you set up some kind of initiative for education, one of the challenges is the people in charge of that education, and making sure that the fund that you've created, or the recipients that are of this initiative, making sure that they receive what you've set up for them. Sometimes the challenge can be those responsible for making sure that they receive the education that you've set up for them. They themselves don't know how to do that. And so it's really a matter of trying very hard to make sure that certain things or certain procedures are put in place so that people don't take advantage of this initiative. In the past, we've seen that people either take advantage of the initiative in terms of using the resources unwisely. And if we look at some of the philanthropic initiatives that we've done in the health sector, it's been the same, where there's not enough education to make sure that these initiatives can last a long time. And so I think what we have decided to do moving forward is to ensure that it's not just because, and going back to, should it be from the heart? The main thing is that this is, we're a part of this community and we want to help the community. And so it's not just Black Park is doing philanthropic causes and that's the end. We want to make sure that it helps, it's sustainable and it helps the community. And so we've decided that moving forward, we're going to put things in place to make sure that, the initiatives are not taken advantage of. I don't know if, Pat has, could speak more on that, but from my end, that's
thank you. Thank you so much, Asanteva. So Patience, maybe to add on to what Asanteva has talked about. So she's talked about education and the fact that you cannot control whether a person accepts that the fund for the education in terms of now taking up that education. What have you done to sort of ensure that you continue bringing in people and scaling up the number of people that you are directly impacting in terms of an education?
Okay, so when we started, we were picking individuals, which is girl child, needy, brilliant. That was the scope. And so we did that and we saw that it was helpful. We were able to monitor these girls and make sure that they enter into tertiary universities. And then we think we have achieved what? Some of them we assisted in finding employment for them, and then we let them go. Then we decided to scale up. So we went into educational institutions, and then we added more girls, and then we even broadened it to add a male child as well. However, as Santua said, what we found was that in as much as you pay the school fees, you get them the logistics, let's say school bag, textbooks, if it is computers, and you donate it to the school, usually it doesn't go to the needy children. And so we decided that going forward, we were going to put structures in place so that we can follow the progress, so that we can make sure that those who we donated these items to are benefiting from the items. Now, we have also decided that in the future, we look at the teachers themselves. Many a times, the reasons why they do not, the children do not receive these logistics that will enable them further their education is that the teachers themselves have needs. Because, for example, if you were a teacher and you were posted to the village where there's no light, you have to walk 5-10 miles before you get to the school, where the school is a attached building. And even your accommodation becomes a problem. Then whatever you donate to the children, I mean, the teachers themselves have challenges. So we have decided in the future to incorporate the teachers themselves, find out what their needs are, because we realize that if they are comfortable, they definitely are going to make sure that the children are also comfortable. So basically, this is, it requires structures and evaluation and constant keeping an eye on the process and making sure that it's being followed so that we can get results. I don't know if I answered the question.
Yes, yes, you have. Thank you so much for that, Patience. It was good to hear about how you're scaling up your operations in collaboration with other institutions, and that indeed is an avenue of scaling up, through collaboration. And I really also did like to hear, I heard about your strategy in terms of how you're monitoring the children, and it was good to see that you're also including the boy child. The girl child has got a lot of attention globally, and it's really good to see that you're actually also focusing a bit on the boy child, who too needs a bit of attention here and there. Just speaking. All right, so thank you for that, Patience. So Titsi, over to you. You talked about funding, and you talked about how you obtain scholarships from different people. Would you like to tell us a bit more about the measures that you put in place to ensure that you continue receiving funding so that your philanthropic initiatives remain sustainable and you can scale up and impact a larger group of children, say, for example, for education?
So when it comes to partnerships and also funding, what I found that works is that, because I also work as a family governance practitioner, one of the things that I saw was that we have a lot more of our local family businesses that are setting up foundations and are becoming focused on philanthropy in different ways. So to make it more impactful and long-term, some of the work that we've been doing is looking for those who are already in the space or who are interested in philanthropy in any way. I think for Africans in Southern Africa, we have a term called Ubuntu, which is I am because we are. And collectively, you have a lot of people who want to support other people. So you have people who've already been giving within their families or outside their families to make sure that children get an education, as well as that they have opportunities for a better life. So we just tagged onto something that we were already doing, which our communities are already doing, and instead structured it in a way where we can collaboratively bring these funds together and administer them and make sure that they have long-term impact. And how we've done that is that we've set up different funds for scholarships from primary to secondary to tertiary education in specific areas of interest or areas of development. And then we've also then taken it a step further as we monitor the students as they go through the journey. And then within the collective itself, start preparing or onboarding of some of our students into businesses that are already running so that they can actually get employment in the areas that they've been educated in. We found that doing that helps in the long term because we're not just educating the children, we're not just educating the youth, we're also providing them with sustainable income by being able to provide jobs for them. And then also identifying within the companies that we are working with, which are the companies that are growing, what are the needs in terms of skills, what are the needs in terms of educated individuals, and then starting to place interns in there that come from our different educational programs. And so we've managed to do this successfully in South Africa and in Zimbabwe, and we're looking to continue to grow the impact of that because we know that there are many families that want to give, but are not sure how to give, that have done scholarships, but then the way they've done the scholarship haven't actually had long-term impact because you have some individuals who will say, we're going to pay school fees for one whole school for a term. And so we have sat down, had conversations with these philanthropists and said, one term is great. It gives these children an opportunity. But then if we make it a constructive giving, we can do more than one term. We can actually push through a lot of students to go through quite a number of years of education and take them right to being able to get a job. So the impact of Ubuntu is basically looking among ourselves, how can we lift up these youth, these individuals that we are wanting to give a better future and make it impactful.
Thank you so much, Titsi, for that. So at least the takeaway for me is that you are working collaboratively with other families to ensure that there is an impact for the end user, the student, and then it's good to see that you're trying to convince them or to encourage them to give more so that that one student doesn't just stop at one term. But maybe just a follow-up question for you is, how do you manage to convince people to give, especially during the pandemic? That is an art, and I'm sure we'd all like to hear that.
I think the thing is, when people are already giving, it's to then identify those people who give from the heart, like you said, those people who are committed to giving. And their donations were not always as big as they were previously, pre-pandemic. But then the fact that there was that commitment to, we want to see our students continue their education, we want to see it to the end. So if you look at the design of the programs that we're putting in place, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So we are not asking the donors or the gifters to give us the full amount. We're saying, let's spread it across a time frame, and then let's be able to monitor our success during this time frame and the impact that we're showing. So because they are committed to actually seeing the impact during the time of COVID, they were more willing to help than pre-COVID, because at that point in time, they realized that the students that they were invested in sometimes did not have access to education. So then we put in place ways that they could actually continue learning, even if they were in remote areas.
Thank you so much for that. So accountability plays a big part in how you scale up your operations, and sharing success stories or sharing, testimonies of the people that have been impacted, I think is hear you say you do really well, and we appreciate the good work that you keep doing now. Thank you for that. So moving to Santeva, we talked about some of the initiatives that Black Park has undertaken, and the patients mentioned that you started off with education and then slowly moved into healthcare and then security. Probably a twofold question. One, did you scale up or in terms of healthcare during the pandemic? Did you move to that new initiative during that period, or was it already something that you had started just before the pandemic? And then how did that impact the growth of the initiatives that you had undertaken as Black Park? Santeva?
Hi, thank you. So I think actually we had started before the pandemic. This is something that we had been doing beforehand. When the pandemic happened, I think it, made it more clear how much we needed to continue with this, because you see that there's this shift globally, and then there are people who are trying to grapple with it, trying to continue their lives like they would normally do, but they are not in a position to do so because of the pandemic. I think that our donations didn't necessarily increase to one initiative, but then we realized that we needed to focus on other things, including what we were already doing. And so, like we had started with education, and we had started with health. And so I think after the pandemic, obviously we maintained these two, but then we also realized that, as a company, you can't be growing and it's just you and the community growing without the people in the community having, access to certain basic necessities. You can't stand alone as an island. And so we started concentrating on our community.
Thank you for that, Santeva. I do see some chats on the chat box, and there is a question which we shall take because it's addressed to all three panelists. And the chats is really encouraging. I see Charles and Cliff encouraging, Black Park and Titsi to continue doing what you're doing. And I see Cliff says that he really does appreciate what patients mentioned in terms of looking at the entire value chain and seeing that if they're impacting the children, they also need to take care of the teachers. So thanks for that as well. So patients, moving to you, just briefly, could you tell us about a bit more about now this shift into the security? And I heard Santeva say that it was a recent initiative. What prompted you to increase your philanthropic initiatives while building scale on the other two? What impact did you seek to achieve with this?
Okay, so I'd like to add a little to what Asantwa said on during the pandemic. So basically what we did during the pandemic was that because we were on lockdown, and Ghana, the whole country was kind of in a euphoria in reaching out to each other and helping. And so even though we were on lockdown and we had closed the company, at home, we had people reaching out to us. We had some of our suppliers sending PPEs to us. So we donated and we joined other individuals and other organizations. So we donated towards that. And that for me was scaling up in the health sector during the pandemic. So we distributed a lot of PPEs to various hospitals, both in Accra and outside Accra. Back to your question on why we have decided to do security. So we operate in communities. You can find our shops in various communities. We realized that the security of our staff and ourselves were in danger. And so we reached out to the security agencies. And many a times we found out that they needed accommodation. So it's probably where the head of security lives in the community. If they needed renovation, and we are in the building industry, so we donated to most police stations. Sometimes it's desk that they require. We do furniture, so we donate desks to them, just to make them comfortable and make their work easier for them. So we would do a renovation of an apartment for the police officer who lives in the community. We would provide desks. Sometimes we get to their offices and, you know, because they have a lot of people coming in there, we think we should maybe, you know, paint the office for them, for it to look attractive, you know, basically making them comfortable and having them know that we are on their side, we are with them, we are in the community, and basically that's what we have done for the police. So this is what I call, you know, making sure that we donate to the security agencies because they are a key to what we do in the community.
Thank you so much for that, Patience. So at least what I hear from you is that in terms of your initiative around security, the philanthropic initiative around security was really around improving the work environment of the different, police officers and whatnot, so that they too can do their job, as well as a person wanting to go to a station and then feel more comfortable doing so. And I think work environment is really important. It needs to be comfortable to encourage both the employee and a person walking in to actually make that particular initiative. So thank you for that. While I have you, you mentioned you do a lot within your country, and you did say outside as well. But the question that I have on the chat box is, if you do intend, and I don't know if you do you intend to then expand your philanthropic initiatives outside your country of origin? And if you do, how would you intend to do so? How would you build that scale?
I think as I age towards my retirement, I'm going to donate a lot more time and take philanthropy work very seriously now. Yes, I would like to join, you know, beyond the borders of Ghana, if there need be, and if it is in the interests of the company. And I would definitely like to join other organizations beyond the borders of Ghana. Yeah. And it depends on the criteria, it depends on the scope. It's something that needs to be discussed. And if the interest is there, yes, we would want to do that.
Thank you so much for that, Patience. So, Asanteva, let me move back to you quickly. There is a question on the chat that actually asks, so we talked about education, you talked about how you're making an impact in healthcare, and now Patience has told us about the impact she's making from a security perspective as well. The question that's there on the chat is the strategies. What strategies do you have in place just so that you can ensure you reach the targeted audience, which would then be the children in this case? Asanteva?
Yes, so we have something like it's more of accountability, and you know, just checking in once in a while, making sure, finding out if they have challenges beforehand, what those challenges are, helping them, having conversations with them and helping them to try and overcome those challenges, or if there's something that we can do to alleviate those challenges so that the funds going directly to the beneficiaries. So it's in a way, it's almost like running a business. So just, you know, making sure that, okay, here are the funds for these beneficiaries. Here's what we would like to see, you know, 3 months in. Here's what we would like to see 6 months in, and just checking in and making sure that these things are in place. And while we have this conversation, making sure that, you know, this is feasible. This is something that they can do. And if it's something that they can't do, or is something that they are challenged with, or they themselves need the resources, like Pat said, then we focus on, let's say, if it's in the education sector, if the teacher himself doesn't even know how to use, a computer, or if the teacher himself doesn't have proper accommodation to be able to get rested before he teaches his class. That's then another conversation that we have to make sure that the children of that class are able to receive properly from this teacher. So those are some of the conversations we have to alleviate these challenges.
Thank you so much, Santewa. So, Titsi, there was a question that was also posed on the chat, and you did mention that you are in more than the one country. But tell us a bit more about how you went into the other regions, and you heard patients say that there has to be a reason why she would want to expand out of her country. So maybe you would be able to share some of your experiences. What did you identify? How did you decide that you'd like to scale up into a different country altogether? What did you consider and the challenges that you faced? Tell us your story.
Sure. So, especially from my in-laws side of the business, their business has got quite a number of locations across the continent as well as in outside the continent. So as businesses are set up or branches are set up of the business in those areas, we start engaging in philanthropy in those areas. So we start seeing what are the issues for the communities that we are serving, what are they struggling with. And as we go into them, besides providing just goods and services, how can we become part of the community? How can we address some of the challenges that they have? And who are the key stakeholders that we need to collaborate with to make sure that our interventions are successful? Which goes back to what I was talking about, Ubuntu, I am because we are. When we are investing in the communities, they start looking especially at our businesses as an added advantage for them. And when we start engaging stakeholders, we're showing them that we are becoming part of your community and we would like to see how much we can help. We're not coming to steal the spotlight from anyone, but instead we're coming to alleviate any of the challenges that they may have. In some places, you do get a bit of resistance because there you will get looked at as an outsider. But as you continue to engage stakeholders, as you continue to address the challenges the community is having, they start opening up and allowing you to become part of the community. And we've had town hall meetings at times with communities just to understand further what are their challenges and if they have been addressed before and what made them succeed or what made them fail, and then going in and playing our part as part of the community.
Thank you for that, Titsi. So it seems like you went to the grassroots. You having town hall conversations is not necessarily the easiest, especially if you're not from the country. And there was a really good question that came up here is that if you had done so well in the country of your origin, making the impact and scaled up, and then you're moved now to a different country to try and replicate the model that you've built in your country of origin, having these town hall meetings, I'm thinking you must have to collaborate with local authorities and government. What challenges have you faced and how did you overcome that?
I think some of the bigger challenges are, especially when you are coming from outside, local communities see you as an outsider. So summoning the town hall meetings, like you said, is not easy in itself, but it allows you to have an inclusive discussion, because as you're entering these communities, you don't know the underlying issues, relational issues, as well as competitive issues that may have. These are some of the things we faced where you align with one stakeholder and then find out that the community doesn't really align with that stakeholder. And there's times where you've invested in the community, but they haven't really received the full investment that you've put in. So it's a lot of learning who to trust, as well as building those trust barriers and breaking them down and having a conversation. So the town halls have been a bit more enlightening for us, because within there, you get to hear the real voice of the community. You're not just hearing from the stakeholders that you've identified. And like you said, you're not going to the top of a pyramid, but you're starting right at the grassroots. And you want to understand who are these people and how can we help them further. At times we've built clinics, sometimes we've built school blocks, and it's mainly focused on how can we then add value to the community besides just bringing our company or organization and providing jobs, which is the first step. But how can we make that this company their personal company? Let them support it. Let's build a tribe that supports the work that we do, so that as we continue to grow, we are not meeting resistance, and especially so from elders within the community.
Thank you for that. Indeed, very insightful. I'm sure Patience has taken some notes to see how she did say she's going to have a lot more time and would be looking to expand. So Patience, I hope that has been helpful to you and the other participants to this particular webinar. Our final question to you, Patience, would be, in the past, and if you heard my intro was really around how philanthropic activities were being done before. It was going door to door. You had to go to someone to see them, to convince them to donate, and then happened COVID. And during the pandemic, and even before the pandemic, a lot of organizations had already moved towards the use of technology as a disruptor. So maybe you could give us some of Black Park's experiences in terms of, do you use technology to then source for funds? And what has been your experience around that?
I hope I heard your initial, I think it wasn't very clear, but I got the end part of it. So we haven't used technology, and most of the philanthropic work we have done have come out of our own pockets from the company. So we haven't actually sourced money from outside to do any philanthropic work. It is something that we will look into in the near future, when we're able to put better structures in place where donors or the people that we source money from can do an evaluation and see that where their money is going is measurable, they can see results. We will then reach out to other organizations and source for funds.
Thank you so much for that, Patience. And I do see we have 4 minutes to the end of the session, so I'd like to give an opportunity to each of our distinguished panelists to give their parting shot. So Patience, I'll start with you. Your parting shot on scalability and doing philanthropic work.
I think it's a blessing to do philanthropic work. When you started, you mentioned that it should come from the heart. Yes, it does. It's good when it comes from the heart. But initially, I'm sure when you approach people that you need funds to do A, B, and C, they will be dragging their money, and you get to do what you use it for implementation of what you went for the money for. Then the next time you go, it will really come from a heart and from a cheerful heart. I have no doubt that philanthropy is a good thing to do. People need help. We cannot place all our burdens on government. We need to reach out. When you are blessed, you have to be a blessing unto others. And we hope to scale up big time in philanthropy. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Patience. Titsi, over to you for your parting shot, and maybe there is a good question on the chat box. Maybe you can bring it as part of your closing comments. Ideally, in a nutshell, the question is really about the requirements to continue operating as a foundation, and the person is called Caroline. Caroline says that she has just recently incorporated a foundation, and because of the many requirements of incorporating and running a foundation, she's not found it easy to look for funding. So maybe given your experience, you could help her out with some guidance as you give your parting shot.
Thank you, Sandeep. I would say, especially if you are a new organization, focus on creating movement and support from the least likely sources. I know we sometimes have this big dream of wanting to create this big change, but we want to do it immediately. Impact takes time, and it takes a lot of support systems and a lot of understanding what really is needed by the people who are coming to support you, and what is needed by those people who you want to then provide support while you set up your foundation. So focus on the small givers, focus on the everyday givers, the people who want to make a difference but don't know how, and align them and get them to collaborate with you. You will eventually capture the eye of the bigger givers because you're already moving along. They can see that there's impact in the work that you're doing, and you can show the impact because you're already walking along. So the big vision, the big dream can definitely become a reality, but keep on moving, start identifying the small donors. As they say, it's every cent is what leads to the thousands, the millions. So don't frown on the cents. Mind your cents, and you will get your dollars. So focus on the smaller givers, the community itself. They're more than willing to give if you just approach them and ask them. There might not be big donations, but then every cent counts, like I said. As for my parting shots, I believe that especially on the continent, we have the answers to a lot of the challenges we have. All we have to do is start collaborating. We need to start collaborating and be able to administer the funds that we have available to us and put them in the right places. We also have to make stakeholders accountable. It's not always easy, as we already know. It can become a political discussion. It can become a political issue, but let that not stop us from collaborating. Let that not stop us from providing solutions to the problems that we have, because collectively, we are the answer to a lot of the challenges that we may face. And when we come together, we can definitely make a difference.
Thank you so much, Titsi. That was well received. And the point that you made on the funding and starting small, I think is really important. So thank you for that. Asanteva, over to you for your parting shot.
Yes, I agree with everything that everyone has said. I think that once you have this opportunity to be this organization, or even this person, not necessarily, being an organization, but I think philanthropy should be, done in every aspect. And the reason is, and it's, it's what Titsi has been saying with, and I may butcher the phrase that you have, but I am because we are. And you can't really, move forward in life in any, group setting or in any, collaboration. You can't move forward in life if it's just you and, others are handicapped. I think it helps to raise, as a continent, it would serve us better if we raise others with us to move along. And, that sounds easier said than done. But I think that if we carry on to do this, I think we become stronger and we begin to appreciate our values. So I think it's very, very needful in any situation or case that you find yourself in to do something to help others, either get to where you are or improve on their current situation. And some people, there are those who would take advantage of it and say, I have a free lunch card or something. But I think, and that's why we have these, to put these strategies in place to make sure that it's not people who are now becoming dependent on like free things, but people who understand that we're presenting you this opportunity so that you can pay it forward, as opposed to just being on the receiving. So it's very important, and I think I would encourage everybody to give, and I would encourage people receiving also to keep in mind that they would also have to pay it forward. That's it.
Thank you so much, Santeva, Titsi, and Patience. This brings us to the end of the third part of the KPMG Disruptive Philanthropic webinar series. The takeaway from here is huge, and it goes back to what I began with. We cannot afford not to give. Everyone, small you earn, you must give. And that is how we will build the future for humans. And I'm sure I really must thank the three panelists for sharing their experiences and insights onto how they've scaled up their operations in spite or despite pandemic, and how you have managed to continue getting that funding from well-wishers and people who have the same objective as your organizations have had. And with that, we shall be sharing a summary of the keynotes from the Scalability webinar, as well as the contacts for the region across East, West, and South, should you wish to get in touch with us. And there they are on the screen. We have Craig from KPMG South Africa, Nike in KPMG Nigeria, and covers West Africa. And then you can get in touch with me if you'd like to have any further conversations around the social pillar of the ESG agenda. Thank you very much, and do have a lovely day ahead.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.